Stop for a moment and think about this. What if the last thing you eat before going to bed could quietly shape how clearly you think tomorrow morning? Not in a vague or symbolic way, but at the level of your memory, your focus, even your ability to recognize familiar faces years from now, because emerging research in nutritional neuroscience is now suggesting something that most people over 60 have never been told clearly. Your brain does its most important repair work while you sleep, and certain foods eaten in that final hour before bed may either support that process or interfere with it without you ever noticing. This idea sits at the crossroads of sleep, science, and brain nutrition, a field that is still developing so quickly that many traditional medical programs have not fully integrated it yet. And that gap in knowledge is exactly why most people continue making evening food choices without realizing the potential impact on their cognitive health. But recent findings are starting to change that picture. One particularly important study from researchers at the University of Cincinnati points to the fact that certain plant based compounds, when consumed in the evening, are capable of passing through the blood brain barrier. This is the brain's protective filter, designed to block harmful substances while allowing only select molecules to enter. What makes this discovery so significant is that these compounds don't just enter the brain passively, they appear to actively support what scientists now describe as nighttime neuroregeneration, essentially enhancing the brain's natural repair cycle during sleep. To put it in simpler terms, your brain is already working through the night to restore itself, clean out waste, and strengthen neural connections. But certain foods may help accelerate or improve that process in measurable ways. Some estimates suggest that this nighttime repair activity could be enhanced significantly, potentially improving aspects of cognitive performance like memory retention and mental clarity. And when you consider how important those functions are to daily life, remembering names, staying oriented, thinking quickly in conversations, the implications become very real. Before we go further, I want you to reflect on something personally. If you feel comfortable, think about your own recent experiences. Have you noticed moments where your memory feels less reliable than it used to? Maybe you walk into a room and briefly forget why, or a name that once came easily now takes longer to retrieve. These small changes often feel normal with age, but they can also be signals worth paying attention to. This is exactly why understanding what supports your brain at night matters more than most people realize. Now, let's begin the countdown of three specific fruits that research suggests may work with your brain's overnight repair system. These are ranked from highly beneficial to exceptionally powerful based on how they interact with inflammation control, neurotransmitter production, and memory consolidation during sleep. And we'll start with number three. At number three, we have tart cherries, a fruit that is often overlooked in conversations about brain health, yet carries a surprisingly strong scientific profile when it comes to cognitive support. Most people associate aging with a gradual decline in mental sharpness. But what many don't realize is that inflammation plays a major role in that process. In fact, researchers from organizations such as the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine have described chronic low grade inflammation in the brain as a silent driver of cognitive decline. The concerning part is that it often progresses without obvious symptoms until noticeable memory issues begin to appear. This is where tart cherries, especially the Montmorency variety, become relevant. These cherries are exceptionally rich in anthocyanins, the natural pigments responsible for their deep red color. But beyond color, these compounds have been widely studied for their anti inflammatory properties, particularly in neurological health. In simple terms, they help reduce biological stress inside the brain that contributes to aging related cognitive slowdown. One notable study conducted at Louisiana State University examined older adults between the ages of 65 and 80 who consumed tart cherry juice daily over a period of 12 weeks. The results showed measurable improvements in verbal memory performance, along with a noticeable reduction in inflammatory markers associated with cognitive decline. These are not minor changes. They suggest that consistent intake may support the brain in maintaining functions that typically weaken with age. To understand why this works, we need to look at how the brain maintains itself overnight. Inside your brain is a system often referred to as the glymphatic system. You can think of it as a cleaning network that becomes more active during sleep, clearing away waste products that accumulate throughout the day. One of the key substances it removes includes proteins linked to neurodegenerative conditions. However, as we age, this cleaning system becomes less efficient, meaning waste removal slows down and the brain has to work under less ideal conditions. Tart cherries appear to support this system indirectly. Research from neuroscience institutes such as the Salk Institute suggests that anthocyanins may help activate supporting glial cells, which assist in the brain's cleanup process. This doesn't just reduce inflammation, it may improve how effectively the brain clears waste during sleep, which is critical for long term cognitive health. There is also another important factor that makes tart cherries especially valuable in the evening. They naturally contain melatonin, the hormone that regulates sleep cycles. Unlike synthetic supplements, this form of melatonin works alongside the body's existing rhythm rather than overriding it. And since deep sleep is the phase where most brain repair occurs, anything that improves sleep quality can indirectly enhance cognitive restoration. Practical use is straightforward. Many studies use around 8 ounces of pure tart cherry juice, taken about half an hour to an hour before bedtime. Alternatives include concentrated forms diluted in water or a small serving of the fruit itself. One important detail often missed is nutrient absorption. The beneficial compounds in tart cherries are better absorbed when consumed with a small amount of healthy fat. This can be something simple like a few nuts or a small amount of nut butter, which helps the body utilize these compounds more effectively. So, while tart cherries may seem like a simple fruit, the research suggests a much deeper role in supporting brain function during the night. And as powerful as this is, it is only the beginning because the next fruit on this list is one that many people have been told to limit or avoid altogether, even though emerging evidence is starting to tell a very different story. At number two, we arrive at something most people immediately recognize, yet few would ever associate with brain repair: bananas. And before you dismiss this, consider how often simple, everyday foods are underestimated simply because they are familiar. Bananas are a perfect example of this misunderstanding, especially for people over 60 who may have been told to avoid them due to their natural sugar content or perceived high glycemic impact. That advice, while well intentioned in some contexts, may have unintentionally removed one of the most accessible brain supporting foods from their daily routine. To understand why this matters, let's look at both real world experience and biological evidence. Take the example of Margaret, a 1 year old woman from Baton Rouge who had gradually removed bananas from her diet after reading concerns about sugar intake. Over time, she began noticing what she described as a persistent mental fog. Her mornings felt slower, recalling appointments became more difficult, and words sometimes slipped away mid sentence. These are subtle changes, but they accumulate and affect quality of life in very real ways. When she reintroduced a single ripe banana each evening as part of a structured dietary routine, something notable happened over the following weeks. Within about 6 weeks, her cognitive clarity scores, based on self reported tracking, improved significantly, and her sleep quality also showed measurable improvement through wearable monitoring. She described the change in simple terms. It felt like her mind had become brighter again, more responsive, more present. While individual experiences vary, her case reflects patterns that researchers are beginning to explore more deeply. From a nutritional science perspective, ripe bananas offer several key compounds that directly relate to brain function during sleep. One of the most important is vitamin B6, a nutrient essential for neurotransmitter production. These neurotransmitters include serotonin, dopamine, and GABA, all of which play central roles in mood regulation, relaxation, and sleep initiation. Without sufficient B6, the body's ability to efficiently produce these chemical messengers becomes less effective, especially in older adults where absorption and conversion efficiency naturally decline with age. In fact, after 60, the body's ability to convert vitamin B6 into its active form can decrease significantly, which means that even if intake remains the same, usable levels may still drop. This is where food based sources like bananas become particularly valuable because they provide B6 in a form that is more readily utilized by the body compared to some processed or synthetic alternatives. But B6 is only part of the story. Bananas also contain tryptophan, an amino acid that serves as a precursor to serotonin and eventually melatonin. This creates a natural biochemical pathway that supports both mood stability and sleep regulation. In simple terms, the compounds in a banana don't just act independently, they work in sequence. Tryptophan contributes to serotonin production, which then supports melatonin synthesis, helping the brain transition into deeper and more restorative sleep states. This is important because sleep is not just rest, it is active neurological maintenance. During deep sleep, the brain consolidates memories, processes information from the day, and clears metabolic waste. When this process is optimized, cognitive clarity improves. When it is disrupted, even slightly, the effects can show up as forgetfulness, slower thinking, or reduced focus. Another key element in bananas is potassium, a mineral essential for electrical signaling in the nervous system. Every thought, memory, and reaction in your brain depends on electrical impulses traveling between neurons. These impulses are regulated by a delicate balance of ions, including potassium. As we age, this balance can become less efficient, which may subtly affect signal transmission in the brain. A medium ripe banana contains a meaningful amount of potassium that supports this system, helping neurons maintain proper electrical function during the night when the brain is actively organizing and storing memories. You can think of it as supporting the brain's internal communication network, ensuring that signals are transmitted clearly and efficiently during the memory consolidation process. There is also an interesting behavioral and biochemical synergy when bananas are combined with certain nutrients. For example, magnesium works closely with GABA receptors, which are responsible for calming neural activity. When magnesium is present alongside the natural tryptophan pathway in bananas, the result is often a more stable and deeper sleep cycle. This is particularly relevant for older adults, where sleep architecture can become lighter and more fragmented over time. From a practical standpoint, the use of bananas in this context is simple. A single ripe banana, ideally consumed about 45 to 60 minutes before bedtime, is often enough to engage these pathways. Ripeness matters because as bananas mature, their starches convert into simpler sugars and certain beneficial compounds become more bioavailable. This is why a fully yellow banana with small brown spots is often considered ideal in nutritional research settings. There is also emerging discussion in nutritional science about how whole food combinations may further enhance these effects. Pairing bananas with small amounts of magnesium rich foods like seeds or nuts may support sleep quality even more effectively, as both nutrients influence overlapping neurological pathways involved in relaxation and memory processing. When you step back and look at the bigger picture, bananas represent something important. The idea that brain support does not always come from complex or expensive interventions. Sometimes it comes from consistent, simple habits that align with the body's natural chemistry. And yet, even with something as accessible as this, bananas are still not the most powerful fruit in this sequence. Because at number one, we reach a food that has been studied far more extensively in the context of brain aging, memory preservation, and even long term cognitive protection. At number one, we arrive at blueberries, a fruit that at first glance may seem familiar, even ordinary. But when you look at what modern neuroscience is revealing, they are anything but ordinary. In fact, blueberries are now considered one of the most heavily studied fruits in relation to brain aging and cognitive protection, with research consistently pointing toward their unique ability to influence memory, neural communication, and long term brain resilience. And what makes this even more important is not just what they contain, but how those compounds interact with your brain during sleep, when the most critical repair processes are already underway. To understand their impact, consider the experience of Robert, a 7-4 year old retired engineer from Tucson. Over time, he began noticing changes that many people quietly accept as normal aging. He would forget familiar routes while driving, repeat himself in conversations without realizing it, and struggle to recall details that once came effortlessly. A standard cognitive assessment placed him in an early concern range, suggesting measurable decline in certain memory functions. While this can sound alarming, what happened next is where the science becomes especially interesting. As part of a broader nutritional adjustment, Robert began consuming a cup of wild blueberries every evening before bed. After about 3 months, his cognitive scores improved enough that he moved out of the concern category. After 6 months, both he and those around him noticed clearer, more stable thinking patterns. His wife described it as having him back again, while Robert himself explained it as if his brain had received an update, becoming more responsive and organized. While individual outcomes vary, his case reflects trends seen in controlled research settings. The science behind blueberries is rooted in their unique phytochemical profile, especially compounds like anthocyanins and pterostilbene. These are not just antioxidants in a general sense. They are small enough at the molecular level to cross the blood brain barrier. This is a highly selective defense system that protects the brain from harmful substances, allowing only certain compounds to enter. Most nutrients never reach brain tissue directly, but these do, which is what makes them so significant in neurological research. Once inside the brain, these compounds interact with neural tissue in ways that reduce oxidative stress and support cellular function. Oxidative stress is one of the key biological processes linked to brain aging, as it gradually damages cells and impairs communication between neurons. By helping to neutralize this stress, blueberry compounds may support the preservation of cognitive function over time. Long term studies add even more weight to this evidence. Large scale research tracking thousands of older adults over many years has found that regular consumption of blueberries is associated with slower cognitive decline. In practical terms, this means better preservation of memory function and thinking speed as people age, compared to those who consume them rarely or not at all. But what makes blueberries especially relevant to nighttime brain health is how they interact with sleep dependent processes. During deep sleep, your brain engages in memory consolidation, a process where experiences from the day are organized, stored, and strengthened. Research suggests that consuming blueberries in the evening may enhance this process, likely because their compounds reach peak activity in the brain during the same time window when these repair mechanisms are most active. There is also another critical factor involved, a protein called brain derived neurotrophic factor, often abbreviated as BDNF. This protein plays a central role in neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to form new connections, adapt, and recover. Higher levels of BDNF are associated with better memory performance and greater cognitive flexibility. Studies have shown that blueberry consumption may support increased BDNF activity, which becomes especially important as natural levels tend to decline with age. In addition to this, pterostilbene, one of the key compounds in blueberries, has been studied for its role in activating protective cellular pathways that help neurons resist damage from oxidative stress. This adds another layer of defense, not just supporting function, but also helping preserve the structural integrity of brain cells over time. From a practical standpoint, the most commonly studied approach is a single cup of blueberries consumed in the evening, typically 30 to 60 minutes before sleep. Wild blueberries are often highlighted in research because they contain higher concentrations of anthocyanins compared to standard cultivated varieties. Even frozen wild blueberries remain highly effective, sometimes even more so, because freezing can help break down cell structures and improve nutrient availability. There is also an interesting nutritional synergy when blueberries are combined with small amounts of other compounds that enhance absorption. For example, certain spices like black pepper contain natural compounds that may increase the bioavailability of plant based antioxidants, allowing the body to utilize them more efficiently. Similarly, pairing blueberries with foods that contain healthy fats may further support absorption and utilization of these beneficial molecules. Beyond memory and cellular protection, blueberries may also influence something called the default mode network of the brain. This network is active when the mind is at rest and plays a key role in autobiographical memory, your sense of personal identity, and life history. Research has suggested that improved function in this network may support better recall of personal memories and smoother cognitive processing in older adults, especially those experiencing early signs of cognitive decline. When you bring everything together, tart cherries, bananas, and blueberries each contribute to brain health in different but complementary ways. One reduces inflammation and supports nighttime cleanup processes, another supports neurotransmitter production and sleep chemistry, and the third provides direct neuroprotective compounds that help preserve and strengthen brain function at the cellular level. And what the research increasingly suggests is that cognitive decline is not simply an unavoidable part of aging. Instead, it is influenced by a combination of lifestyle, nutrition, and biological repair processes that remain active well into later life. the brain continues to respond to the inputs it receives, even in the 70s, 80s, and beyond. What matters most is consistency. These fruits